Hey everyone, this is Replays. You're about to listen to Sci-Fi Encounters of the Strange Kind with Denise Harris. This was from last Saturday night. There is some really freaky stuff on this episode, let me tell you. So, you all definitely have a listen. There'll be about 10 minutes of music first, and then she'll have the show. So, definitely have a good time listening to this, because I'm telling you, you're going to think twice before you go into the woods alone, let me tell you. So, here we go.
What's wrong with me? Why do I feel like this? I'm going crazy now. No more gas in the red. Can't even get started. Nothing heard, nothing said. Can't even speak about it. I'm my life, I'm my head. Don't wanna think about it. Feels like I'm going insane, yeah. It's a thief in the night to come and grab you. It can creep up inside you and consume you. A disease of the mind, it can control you. It's too close for comfort. Oh. Disturbia.
just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry. You float like a feather in a beautiful world. I wish I was special. You're so very special. But I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't care if it hurts. I wanna have control. Perfect body. I want a perfect soul. I want you to notice when I'm not around. You're so very special. I wish I was special. But I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. Whatever makes you happy, whatever you want. You're so very special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here.
Again, you are listening to Replay Sci-Fi Encounters of the Strange Kind with Denise Harris. Just a few more minutes and you are about to get freaked out. Enjoy.
She's the only one to make me stay. I fell in love with the girl of my dreams. She's the only one to make me stay.
And welcome to KBLP and Encounters of the Strange Kind with yours truly, Denise Harris. So, tonight we're going to talk about strange disappearances. And the one topic that was brought up is how have 1,600 people plus went missing from public lands without a trace? Not a single trace. Well, we're going to see if we can unravel a mystery. I doubt it, but we can sure try. You never know, right? And we're going to start off with 18-year-old Joe Keller. He vanished from a dude ranch in Colorado's Rio Grande National Forest. He joined the ranks of those missing on public land. It's 1,600 plus people, but the numbers are growing. And when an initial search turns up nothing, who's going to keep looking? July 23rd, 2015 was the eve of Joe Keller's 19th birthday. He was a Cleveland, Tennessee native, and he had been spending the summer between his freshman and sophomore years at Cleveland State Community College. He went on a Western road trip with his buddies Colin and Christian. They had seen Las Vegas, San Francisco, and the Grand Canyon before heading to Joe's aunt and uncle's dude ranch, the Rainbow Trout Ranch in the San Juan Mountains in southwestern Colorado. The ranch is in Conejos County, which is bigger than Rhode Island, 8,000 residents and no stoplights. Conejos, it's Spanish for rabbits, is one of the poorest counties in Colorado. It's also a hell of a place to get lost. Joe, he was a competitive runner, open water swimmer, and obstacle course racer. And Colin was a member of the cross-country team. They had been running together often during their trip. Neither was totally acclimated to the altitude. The ranch sits just below 9,000 feet. Joe was a bit slower than his friend. He suffered from asthma as a 3-year-old, but he had kicked it by the age of 12. The workout would be routine, an hour-long run, likely along Forest Road 250. It bisects the ranch and continues into the National Forest, following the Conejos River upstream. Joe left his phone and wallet at the ranch house. He wore only red running shorts, blue trail shoes, and an Iron Man watch. He was shirtless with blonde anime hair and ripped muscles, and he looked more like a California lifeguard than a Tennessee farm kid. At 4:30 p.m., the friends started out together. Neither runner knew the area, but old-timers would tell you even a blind man could find his way out of Conejos Canyon. On the south side, which is the runner's left, cattle graze along the river. The north side, Ponderosa Pines, birthday candle, the steep tuff until they hit sheer cliffs. And massive canyon wall rising 2,000 feet above the gravel road, toward Black Mountain. As the two men jogged by the corral, one of the female wranglers yelled, "Pick it up." They smiled, and Joe sprinted up the road before they settled into their paces. And, of course, Colin was surging ahead a bit. The GPS track on Colin's watch shows him turning right off Forest Road onto the ranch drive and snaking up behind the lodge, trying to check out 3 geologic outcroppings, Faith, Hope, and Charity, that loom over the ranch. But the run became a scramble, so he cut back down toward the road and headed upriver. A fly fisherman says he saw Colin about 2.5 miles up the road, but not Joe. Colin never encountered his friend. He timed out his run at a pace that led, of course, to puking due to the altitude. No Joe. Colin moseyed back to the ranch house and waited. An hour later, he started to worry. "Hey, Michelle, glad you could make it." We're starting off with one of the 1,600 people that have disappeared on public lands. We'll see. We're talking about Joe Keller. College started to worry. The search engaged about 15 dogs and 200 people on foot, horseback, and ATV. An infrared-equipped airplane flew over the area, and a $10,000 reward was posted for information. How far could a shirtless kid in running shoes get anyway? Yes, it is crazy. Totally crazy. When Joe didn't show up to get ready for dinner, Colin and Christian drove up, honking and waiting for Joe to come limping toward the road like a lost steer. At 7:30, a small patrol of ranch hands hiked up the rocks toward Faith, the closest formation. By 9:30, there were 35 people out looking. If he was hurt at any way, he would have hurt us, Joe's uncle, David Van Berkom, said. He was either conscious or not there. The first 20 hours are key, says Professor Coaster, a.k.a. Professor Rescue, author of the Search and Rescue Guidebook. Coaster was consulted on the Keller case and noted that, like most missing runners, Joe certainly wasn't dressed for a night outside. Plus, he said it wouldn't have been unusual for a young athlete like Joe to switch from run to scramble mode. Heading for higher ground is a known strategy for a lost person. Around 10 p.m., the Van Berkoms called the Conejos County Sheriff's Department, and Sheriff Howard Galvez and 2 deputies showed up around midnight. 2 hours later, good Lord. It was now Joe's birthday. At this point, the effort was still what pros call a hasty search, quick and dirty, of course focusing on the most logical areas. It was a warm night, and everybody still expected Joe to find his way back at daybreak. Wild story with him. That morning, as ranch employees and guests continued the search, Jane Van Berkom alerted Joe's parents, Zoe and Neil, and Jane, his sister, is originally from Kenya. The family arrived at 2 a.m. In the morning, at 6 a.m., the professional search began, starting at what searchers call the point last seen, the ranch's Big Ponderosa Pine Gate. A deputy fire chief from La Plata County named Roy Vreeland and his scent dog, Cain, picked up a direction of travel, which pointed up Forest Road 250. More dogs arrived from Albuquerque and identified different directions of travel, or none at all. Additional firefighters drove over La Plata County. Everyone on the ground were volunteers, as is largely the case. There was nothing to go on. In that first week, the search engaged about 15 dogs, 200 people on foot, horseback, and ATV. And an infrared-equipped airplane from the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control flew over the area. Colin's brother Tanner set up a GoFundMe site that paid for a helicopter to search for 5 hours. And a volunteer flew his fixed-wing aircraft in the canyon multiple times. A guy with a drone buzzed the steep embankments along Highway 17, the closest paved road, and the rock formation Faith, which has a cross on top. A $10,000 reward was posted. But after several days, volunteers began going home, of course pulled by other obligations. The few who remained did interviews, followed up on leads, and worked teams and dogs. But the search was already winding down. A volunteer said we had a very limited number of people. That's very typical in Colorado. You put out calls and people say, well, if he hasn't been found in that time, I have to go to work. The absence of clues left a vacuum that quickly filled with anger, resentment, false hopes, and conspiracy theories. A tourist with a timestamp receipt from a little gift shop in nearby Horka swore she saw 2 men on the road, but later changed her story. What a surprise. And here we go. A psychic reached out on Facebook to report a vision that Joe was west of Sedona, Arizona. There was even a theory he'd been kidnapped in order to have his organs harvested and sold on the black market. Good Lord. We feel he's not in that area. He's been taken. Neil Keller would tell months later. I'm a scientist, Coaster said. I'm fond of Occam's razor. That's the principle that the simplest explanation holds true. You could have a band of terrorists tie him to a tree and interrogate him. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. Joe Keller had just joined the stratum of the hundreds and thousands of people who've gone missing on our federal public lands. The thing is, nobody knows exactly how many. The estimate is 1,600 plus. The National Institute of Justice, the research arm of the Department of Justice, calls unidentified remains of missing persons the nation's silent mass disaster. What we wanted to know is how many people are missing in our wild places, the roughly 640 million acres of federal lands including national parks, forests, and Bureau of Land Management property. Cases like 51-year-old Dale Stelling, who in 2013 vanished from a short viewing trail near the gift shop at Colorado's Mesa Verde National Park. Morgan Heimer, a 22-year-old rafting guide. He was wearing professional-grade personal flotation device when he disappeared in 2015 in Grand Canyon National Park during a hike after setting up camp. An Ohioan, Chris Fowler, who vanished from the Pacific Crest Trail last fall. At least 2 people have recently gone missing outside the National Forest in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And of course, there are many, many more stories like this. Excuse me. The Department of the Interior knows how many wolves and grizzly bears roam its wilds, but it can't keep track of its visitors who disappear. But the government does not actively aggregate such statistics. The Department of Justice keeps a database, the National Missing and Identified Persons System, but reporting missing persons is voluntary in all but 10 states. And law enforcement and coroner participation is voluntary as well. The result, the Incident Management Analysis and Reporting System, that's a $50 million database to nowhere. Only 14% of the several hundred reportable incidents were entered into it. The system is so flawed that Fish and Wildlife has said no thanks and refuses to use it. Of course, that only leaves the only estimates to civilians and conspiracy theorists. Aficionados of the conspiracy theories of the vanished believe that at least 1,600 people, and perhaps many times that number, remain missing on public lands under circumstances that defy easy explanation. Numbers aside, it matters tremendously where you happen to disappear. If you vanish in a municipality, the local police department is likely to look for you. And of course, the police contain assistance from the county sheriff or other cases, state police or university law enforcement. If foul play is suspected, your state's Bureau of Investigation can decide to get involved. Atop that, of course, is the FBI. With the exception of the sheriff, however, these organizations don't tend to go rifling through the woods unless your case is a criminal one. But all bets are off when you disappear in the wild. While big national parks like Yosemite operate almost as sovereign states with their own crack search and rescue teams, go missing in most western states. And with the exception of New Mexico and Alaska, statutes that date back to the Old West stipulate that you're now the responsibility of the county sheriff. Okay. We thought that in the wild, someone would send in the National Guard, the Army Rangers, the A-Team, Rambo, somebody, and that they wouldn't rest until they found you. Now we're not so sure. There are no federal standards for terrestrial search and rescue, Custer says. Very few states have standards. A missing person is a local problem. It's a historical institution when the sheriff was the only organized government. And when it comes to the locals rising to your rescue, there's a vast spectrum of capability there. For instance, the Rio Grande National Forest. It has one full-time law enforcement officer who wasn't given clearance to talk to anybody. Ranger Andrea Jones of the 377,000 acre Conejos Peak District, where Joe disappeared, did lament that sometimes she discovers cases in the weekly newspaper. On occasions, when we initially learn about a search and rescue in the forest from the local media, it's difficult for us to properly engage, communicate, and offer knowledge or resources. But wherever you are, once a search goes from rescue to recovery, most of those resources dry up. On August 4th, 2015, after Joe had been missing for 13 days, Sheriff Galvez pulled the plug on the official search. What had begun as a barnyard musical was now a ghost story. The river, already dropping quickly, had been searched and ruled out. Dog teams had scratched up nothing. Abandoned cabins had been searched and searched again. And I quote, we checked the pit toilets at the campgrounds. We did everything, Galvez says. We even collected bear crap. We still have it in the evidence freezer. Galvez had been elected sheriff only 9 months earlier. And while he had years of law enforcement experience, he had no background leading search and rescue operations. A responder said that by the time he arrived on the second day of searching, tension was already rising between Keller and Sheriff Galvez. Keller felt that he wasn't doing enough. Galvez felt that Keller was in the way, barking orders and criticizing his crew. When dogs and volunteers start to go back to their lives and the aircraft return to their hangar, a missing person search can look eerily quiet. The Keller family hired 2 private investigators who turned up nothing. Zoe Keller told me it was a waste of $800 a day. One of the investigators told me he never had a case with less to go on. The reward was raised from $10,000 to $25,000, then to $50,000. But as David Van Berkom said, there isn't a sniff of anything. 2 weeks after Joe's cold vanish, Alamosa County Undersheriff Sean Woods, who had been called in to assist by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, told Keller about a tracker he knew named Alan Duffy. He was a 71-year-old surgical assistant. Duffy became interested in bloodhounds when his brother David disappeared in the San Gabriel Mountains in 1978. But he was found dead of gunshot wounds 6 weeks later. Duffy has since taken his dogs to search for JonBenet Ramsey's neighborhood and to track stolen horses in Wyoming. Of course, calling in Duffy was a wild card, but there was nothing else to go on. On August 15th, Duffy loaded 3-year-old RC on account of his black and tan coat into his Jeep and drove 300 miles from Broomfield, Colorado to the Rainbow Trout Ranch. A deputy gave him a scent item, one of Joe's used socks. That's as good as underwear, Duffy said. And he will tell you that bloodhounds are out of fashion. Everybody wants a shepherd, but going old school has its advantages. RC's trigger word to sniff for a living person as to oppose human remains is find. For search and rescue, he wears his orange harness with Duffy holding the lead. After 4 hours of searching, Duffy switched RC's harness to his black collar and told him, "We're going to go gizmo." The dogs cue for cadaver mode. 4.5 miles up Forest Road 250 at Spectacle Lake, a murky pond actually. RC circled, tugged at the vegetation, bit at the water, then jumped in and sat in the shallows, and he wouldn't leave. Duffy wasn't convinced necessarily that a body was in the lake, but he said that the scent was drawn toward water and believed there was a corpse somewhere nearby. Rain or critters could have deposited cadaver material in the lake, enough to set up alarms in RC's snout. But at 4.5 miles from Joe's point last seen, the lake was at the far end of the ground game probabilities. They offered up a few more scenarios, but with a few other sources of help, desperation had led to Duffy. At least he was trying, Zoe said. Continued searches in August turned up nothing. Neil Keller was commuting back and forth between Tennessee and Conejos County, searching every moment he could. In October 2015, when he and the sheriff were no longer on speaking terms, he urged the county commissioners for more help, including a dive team to search Spectacle Lake. Keller was feeling the stress. He had lost his, 15 pounds from hiking and scrambling in the altitude. Just before Thanksgiving, he, David Van Berkom, and a small posse spent 2 days searching the snow-covered scree west of the ranch. It was the area that seemed most logical, but it's mean terrain. No Joe. Keller would have to spend the long Colorado winter still not knowing. The canyon now belonged to the snowmobilers and coyotes. Next season's fly fishers and ranch guests wouldn't show up in any numbers until the snow melted. The guy who wrote this, Billman, stepped through the missing persons portal back in 1997 when researching updates on Amy Roe Bechtel, a runner who vanished in the Wind River Range of Wyoming. His intrigue only grew. He listens to earbuds to Coast AM on a tiny radio. The program explores all sorts of mysteries of the paranormal. Paulides, an ex-cop from San Jose, is the founder of North American Bigfoot Search. His obsessions shifted from Sasquatch to missing persons when he was visited at his motel near an unnamed national park by two out-of-uniform rangers who claimed that something strange was going on with the number of people missing in the national parks. Ooh. He wouldn't say the place or the year, so the Park Service wouldn't try and put the pieces together. In 2011, Paulides launched the Can-Am Missing Project, which catalogs cases of people who disappear or are found on wildlands across North America under what he calls mysterious circumstances. That's totally crazy. They never did find him. He's got several books out. That's insane. There was nothing. Oh, yeah, why you don't run? Yeah, me too. I'd find bodies. That would be my problem. So, yeah, I don't run either. But it's just simply insane. There is nothing of these people, and not even a shred of anything that they could find them. Paulides has spent hundreds of hours writing letters and Freedom of Information Act requests in an attempt to break through the National Park Service red tape. He believes the Park Service in particular knows exactly how many people are missing but won't release the information for fear that the sheer numbers and the ways in which people went missing would shock the public so badly that visitor numbers would go down. Well, of course. And at a meeting, Paulides brought along a missing persons activist, Heidi Streetman. She's a faculty member at Denver's Regis University. She teaches research methods. After reading the Missing 411 series, she became frustrated there was no searchable database for families of the disappeared. In 2014, she floated a petition titled, "Make the Department of Interior Accountable for Persons Missing." It now has over 7,000 signers with a goal of 10,000. Streetman is a spirited 56-year-old who spent her childhood camping all over Colorado. And she is beset with the case of Dale Stelling, a 51-year-old Texan who vanished on Mesa Verde's Point Trail on a 100-degree Sunday afternoon in 2013. Yes, a lot of people. And I think that's very conservative at this point. We don't know how many, actually. At the petroglyphs where he was last seen, there's an intersection with an old access trail where his wife, Denise, believes he may have left the main trail. If there was a way to get lost, they would find it, she said. But even if he had taken the wrong path, he surely would have realized his mistake and backtracked. Maybe he collapsed in the heat. But again, they searched the area extensively on foot, with dogs, helicopters, with firefighting crews. They sent climbers and collected a whole trunk's worth of knapsacks, cameras, purses, wallets, water bottles, and binoculars. None of them Stellings. The park superintendent, Cliff Spencer, still holds search and rescue training exercises just in case they come across a clue. The thing is, in all his years with Park Service, he doesn't recall 5 cases like this. It's not likely that the legislation would help the Stelling family, but amendment to an existing law made it easier for volunteer search and rescue outfits to access federal wildlands. This is just crazy. Just Simply crazy. Let's see. In late May 2016, this gentleman, Billman, visited Conejos County. A month earlier, 2 Antonia men had been reported overdue from a camping trip to Duck Lake, less than 3 miles southwest of the Rainbow Trout Ranch, during a spring storm that dumped 2 feet of snow. Teams were called in, along with the Wolf Creek Ski Area Ski Patrol. One of the men managed to struggle back. The ski patrol eventually found the remote. They did find him. The search had also resumed for Joe Keller. In early May, more than 30 volunteers, including Keller, Colin, and 11 dogs from the Colorado Forensic Canines, had spent a week crisscrossing Conejos Canyon. The mission was to either find a needle in a haystack or to significantly reduce the probability that he was within a 3-mile radius of the point last seen. The search was organized by the John Francis Foundation, a Minnesota nonprofit that has helped more than 40 families with loved ones missing on public land. This is totally insane. The May search for Joe turned up nothing. But they went bushwhacking off the Duck Lake Trail about 3.5 miles of the ranch. Keller and partner with him came upon a sleeping bag, a cook pot, a tarp, and some bug spray, the gear of the lost campers. And this Billman went looking for Sheriff Galvez and found him outside the Conejos County Jail, directing inmates in orange jumpsuits as they planted flowers. It was clear he'd rather orchestrate landscaping details than talk, but who can blame him? The department has taken a beating on Facebook, Dateline, and the Chattanooga Times Free Press. He says he doesn't agree he should be in charge of search and rescue. You're the sheriff. Come on. He said he was thinking of going to the state senators, now listen to this, and saying he'd like to be backed out of that because he doesn't have a $90 million budget. It's crazy. Crazy. It's still an ongoing investigation. This is, and they have not found anything. Oh, wait. This says on Wednesday, July 6th, a search and rescue hobbyist and endurance runner. A search and rescue distance runner. And he was a former offensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers, John Renestra. Excuse me. Discovered Joe's body in a boulder field below the cliff band. He said he started looking for rapids, caves, cliffs, of course, and right at 2.5 miles, there was a place to pull off the road, and there were cliffs close by. How could they not have found him? That was insane. Did he just turn up out of nowhere? They said they searched there. They said they had to reach him on foot. Joe's body was 1.7 miles. The crow flies from the ranch, less than 2 miles. Searchers have been close. In November 2015, Keller and David Van Berkom had come within several hundred yards. Wow. Crazy. And nobody. Yeah. A lot of people live off the radar in these public lands. It's totally insane. It's sad they found him like that, but how could they have missed him for that long a time? I mean, they had the dogs out there, they had the search teams, they had the helicopters, they had the drones, they had all this. So what do you think about this? About all these people missing on our public lands? I think it's totally insane. And they're saying how America's national parks became hotbeds of paranormal activity. It says Bigfoot and aliens have come to overshadow the government's aging database of missing persons cold cases. The disappearance of Stacey Ann Harris has a cultish online following. On dozens of Reddit threads and chat boards, thousands of people, strangers intimately familiar with her life, obsessively dissect her vanishing. The case is mysterious, eerie, and frustratingly unsolved. Harris went missing from Yosemite National Park more than 30 years ago. Just seems to have disappeared. The park's then superintendent had told the press this. It was in the afternoon on July 17th, 1981, when a group of 6+ Harris and her father rode into Sunrise High Sierra Camp on horseback. The camp sits 9,400 feet above sea level and is regarded for its historic significance, being the final stop in Yosemite's Mountain Chalet Loop. Harris told her father she wanted to photograph a nearby lake. It wasn't terribly far, just over a bluff. He didn't want to go with his daughter, who was 14 at the time, but an elderly man from their group would tag along. At some point, the man grew tired. He was 77, and he sat down to rest. Harris, seemingly determined to reach the water, went on. Back at camp, the group's tour guide remembered noticing her from afar. She was standing on a rock about 50 yards south of the trail. According to a summary of her official cold case file, that was the last time anyone saw her, or the last time anyone is known to have seen her. She vanished without a trace, leaving only a camera lens behind. Search and rescue teams stopped looking for Harris, but that hasn't stopped her case from finding new life. Today, the teenager is well known among paranormal enthusiasts. Her disappearance and hundreds of others comprise a strange portfolio of mysterious national park vanishings, loosely tied together by a few common and dubiously supernatural themes. The genesis of this movement belongs to David Paulides, which we talked about earlier. He's a cryptozoologist with a self-described law enforcement investigative background. He created the Missing 411 books and documentary which chronicle preternatural disappearances in or around national parks. Here is his name, so you can look these books up. Let's see. Missing 411 books. Okay, there it is. That's his. In his first book, Missing 411, Western United States and Canada, Unexplained Disappearance of North American That Have Never Been Solved. He recalls a conversation he claims to have with a national park ranger. And I quote, "I sat in my room at the lodge and listened to the ranger tell me about a series of missing people inside our parks. The ranger stated that the events were very unusual, many people were never found, and the Park Service was doing everything possible to keep a lid on the..." I don't know how that came out. David. How did that even come out caved? I don't know. David. Sorry. Freaks must be visiting again. The ranger stated that events were very unusual. Many people were never found. And the Park Service was doing everything possible to keep on the lid on the publicity surrounding the missing people. There you go. He explained that non-law enforcement employees weren't privy to all the info, but that the upper echelon law enforcement supervisors inside the Park Service were concerned about the numbers and facts surrounding certain cases. Paulides has become the foremost expert on national park disappearances. He's spent 7,000 hours researching cases like heiresses, interviewing law enforcement, search and rescue personnel, newspaper archives, and the Freedom of Information Act request. He is also a Bigfoot chaser, however, and he seemingly allowed his work to become a paranormal fodder because he thinks either Bigfoot or something else is abducting people. Okay. When he is investigating missing persons, he works on the North American Bigfoot search. In 2013, he submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to National Park Service for records related to 2 missing hikers in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In his 2016 documentary, Missing 411, he speaks on Coast to Coast AM, a paranormal radio talk show. The bedrock of his implied thesis that something sinister, even supernatural, is happening to missing persons inside of national parks. He calls these clusters. These alleged commonalities in type, place, and circumstances of North American disappearances are clues to a larger mystery. Some clusters, like people vanishing near water, are unremarkable. Drowning has remained the number 1 cause of death in national parks. Other clusters, however, are wildly bizarre. He has described people melting into their clothing. He posts that children with disabilities are overrepresented among the vanished. Storms inexplicably tend to hit after someone has gone missing. In Aris's case, it should be noted, investigators said at the time that unusually arid summer weather could have thwarted the scent dog sniffing due to dry and dusty conditions. People disappear and they're found in the middle of berry bushes, he writes. They go missing while picking berries, and some are found while eating berries. The connection between some disappearances and berries cannot be denied. An expansive story recently published in Outside puts that number at 1,600 individuals plus. This includes missing persons on all public lands, approximately 640 million acres. Despite the supernatural undertones, Paulides did discover something spooky, something more disturbing than a mythical man-ape stealing children from their parents. The National Park Service doesn't want to keep track of missing persons. It doesn't know how many individuals have disappeared in its park. If you were to ask, they would tell you, we don't know. Wow. And he exposed this fact in his documentary, Missing 411. Wow. And it was funny because he asked during an interview with the Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar, who oversaw the National Park Service, Paulides asked him the same question. How many people have gone missing from national parks? And his answer was, I don't recall. Wow. Wow. Crazy. That's insane. But his revelation kickstarted the petition to force the National Park Service to keep such a list. Wow. Crazy, crazy. So, what do you think? Could there something be paranormal going on? What do you think? Bizarre disappearances in national parks. People travel from one side of the continent to the other to see the tall sequoia trees. on the west coast to the pristine beaches on the east coast. 21 years ago, in the afternoon of July 24th, 1997, Amy Roe-Bechtel, 24, again began an outside run. Yeah, there's good reasons not to go, apparently. Amy was training for the 2000 Olympic marathon she hoped to qualify for, but she never returned. Wyoming is called America's biggest small town, and Landor is an outdoor enthusiast hub where climbers gravitate to the unique formations in Sinks Canyon within the Shoshone National Forest. Sinks Canyon is part of a magnificent ecosystem stretching from sagebrush and juniper-covered foothills through conifer forests, aspen meadows, to the alpine habitat in mid-central Wyoming. Amy vanished while running along Loop Road, a route that includes Sinks Canyon Road and runs the Popo-Agie River approximately 15 miles south of Lander. Her car was found by her neighbors, Todd and Amy, parked at Burnt Gulch, where Amy was marking her 10K hill climb she was planning for the fall. When Amy had not returned by evening, her neighbors got into their car and headed for the road, gravel road of switchbacks ascending to Loop Road. At approximately 1 a.m., they found her white Toyota parked on the side of the road. The weather during July is mild, with days averaging 85 degrees and evenings about 54. There had been rain in the afternoon, and puddles of water surrounded the vehicle. Todd and Amy looked for footprints or tire tracks, but there's nothing. Only Amy's sunglasses, her keys in the driver's seat, and a to-do list. Her green Eagle wallet was missing. Panicking, Todd called her husband, Steve. The search for Amy began early the following morning with her husband, Steve, and about a dozen friends. By day's end, dogs, dirt bikes, ATVs, and over 100 volunteers had joined the search. The following day, horses and helicopters began searching the rugged terrain. By the third day, police expanded the search to a 30-mile radius. As with most missing persons or missing wives, police turned towards the husband, in this case, Steve. A move that 20 years later appears totally unwarranted and limited the search with tunnel vision. Amy and Steve had only been married a little over a year. Steve was a climber. He and Amy both worked at the local climbing shop. Amy and Steve were bubbly, happy newlyweds and had just bought their first home. And, of course, the police searched Steve's journals, acquaintances. Wow. The FBI would make accusations Steve killed her. Current detectives disagree. Of course, Steve had an alibi backed up by a fellow climber. According to Runner's World article, Long Gone Girl, Fremont County Sheriff's Cold Case Detective Sergeant John Zerga disagrees with the way the case was handled in 1997. Nowadays, everything is viewed as a homicide. Back then, it wasn't viewed that way. She was a missing runner. For 3 days, we didn't close out any routes out of here. We didn't close off any vehicles. All we had was a bunch of people out there looking for a missing runner. We actually ruined the investigation with the vehicle because we allowed them to drive it home. A lot of stuff was lost. While all eyes had been on Steve, it wouldn't be until over a decade later when the brother of Dale Wayne Eaton, 57, would talk to police. He tried to contact them before, but no response. There we go. The detectives were so adamant it was Steve, they weren't looking anywhere else, said Sergeant Zerga. 15 years after Amy vanished, Zerga spoke to Eaton's brother, who told him Eaton would often camp in the area Amy had vanished. A few camped in the area, a few outside Lanner. Eaton had tried to abduct a family pulled over with car trouble. After his arrest for attempted kidnapping, he escaped and later found by authorities in the Shoshone National Park. In 1988, Lucy Marie Kimmel vanished on a trip from Colorado to Billings, Montana. Then 14 years later would be linked to Eaton. Eaton was sentenced to death on March 20th, 2004 for Kimmel's kidnapping, rape, and murder. Good Lord. That's crazy. Crazy. So you have dogs, helicopters, drones, and everybody looking for these people. And they disappear without a trace. It is freaking crazy. Crazy. I recommend getting those books, Missing 411. Strange Cases. That's totally crazy. So we're going to take a break here. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about Roanoke, the 5 spookiest disappearances all time. And we'll talk about the missing 411 theories of the mysterious disappearances. We're also going to talk about Susan Walsh, who they claim disappeared after she was a journalist after an article about underground vampires. So, yeah, don't go to national parks. So, going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with more.
Where do you come from? The dust. Where will you go to? The grave. Dawn is soon fall. Everyone calls something wicked. This way comes. Staring
like someone's coming over. She'll be here soon. If she... Nobody knows what she looks like. Who is she anyway? She is the fairy's midwife. And she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an ornament, drawn with a team of little atomies athwart men's noses as they lie asleep. Oh, nothing.
Standing on the edge of the quay, no lights flashing on the water for me. Fogging my mind, darkens in my eyes. Silence is streaming for a distant sound. Little yellows, rising for a breath of freedom drowned. Stillness overcome me in the night. Listen to rising water moan. I'm waiting, waiting for the nightfall. Wait, I'm waiting, waiting for the nightfall.
Picture the sun, the mayfly,
What's going on? Simon,
like
what's
the
happening?
sound of distant
Simon?
voices,
Simon?
lives and dies in a moment.
Shadows all through me, shudder away. Echo me, echo me. Am I alone or is the river alive? 'Cause it echoes me, echoes me, echoes me. I'm waiting, waiting for the nightfall. Wait, I'm waiting, waiting for the
Okay, and we are back. A lot can't find anything, or perhaps call it quits. That's possible, but they did find them. That was the thing. They had DNA, and they linked them to it. Yeah, because there's no trace, not a scent, nothing. Yeah, I'm thinking that too, Michelle. Honestly, yeah. Me too. That came to mind right away. How could you just disappear without a trace? Nothing, nada. And then, what, how many years later to show up somewhere where they searched millions of times? Or hundreds of times anyway. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not running anywhere, so it doesn't matter. So, but yeah. Running groups. Don't be going off the trail. Okay, so in 1587, 115 people disappeared from Roanoke. What do you think happened? What is your take on that? Like the unsolved murder at Greystone Mansion in the 1920s, the disappearance of the Roanoke Island colony is an unexplained mystery that experts are still trying to figure out today. In 1587, a group of 115 settlers from England arrived at Roanoke Island, which is off the coast of North Carolina. The governor of the colony, John White, decided to return to England that year to replenish supplies. However, a major war broke out in Europe, and his return to Roanoke was delayed by 3 years. That's a long time. When John White finally did make it back to Roanoke Island, every last settler and every last trace of the colony had completely vanished without a trace. The only thing that remained was a single skeleton and a strange word carved into a wood post. So what happened to the people of Roanoke Island? How can an entire colony of people just vanish? Prior to leaving Roanoke for supplies, John White was witness. He had a happy occasion, the birth of his granddaughter, Virginia. She was also the first English child to be born in America. But when he returned, the entire colony was gone, including his wife, daughter, and baby granddaughter. Only 2 clues remained as to where the entire colony had gone: a single skeleton and the word Croatoan carved into wood. So what did this mysterious word mean? White and others knew that the word must be the key to solving this mysterious and potentially tragic disappearance. And of course, several possible explanations have emerged through 400 years of investigations. Some think that the colonists found life too hard and attempted to return only to meet their untimely deaths at sea. Okay, but as I understand it, there was still food on the table, like they were sitting down to dinner. Everything was just left as it was. So why would you just leave in the middle of dinner to go across the sea? I don't think so. And because the word Croatoan was the name of a Native American tribe that lived on an island south of Roanoke, some believe the members of the colony were killed or taken by Native Americans. Possible, but they never found any remains of any of them. That's part of the mystery of this. You think by the tribe of Croatoans? They never found any remains anywhere, though, even by where the tribe was supposedly at. These theorists believe that the carved word was a colonist's way of letting others know what happened. That's where I was going with that they were attacked, but where are the bodies? They haven't found a body, one. So I don't know. Others still believe perhaps the colonists simply moved, though that doesn't explain the word, or they never left indication. Why would they not leave anything behind to let him know where they went? That was the strange thing. I don't know. Supposedly, they believe they have found evidence that may have surfaced connecting the Roanoke colonists to a site 60 miles west of the island. Archaeologist Nicholas M. Lecchetti said, I'm trying to make sure I say this correctly, we have evidence from this site that strongly indicates there were Roanoke colonists here. Could this be the answer to this centuries-old mystery? Could the colonists simply have moved? Why was it so, and if so, why has it been so difficult to pinpoint where they moved to? Oh yeah, sure, they were cannibalistic, but no bones have been found. That's the strange thing. They've dug and searched for any kind of bones, and as far as I know, they have not found any. This 425-year-old mystery continues to be a fascinating focus of investigation among experts. But the fact remains, no one truly knows what became of baby Virginia and the other 115 settlers of Roanoke Island. So what do you think happened? I'm going to give you choices here. Yeah, they could have, but why would they? No bones found of any of the colonists. I don't know. I guess that's a possibility. Okay, what do you think happened to lost colonists of Roanoke Island? A, they were lost at sea. 2, they fell victim to local Native Americans. 3, they moved inland to start over. Or 4, I have no clue, but this is truly fascinating. Well, of course they're not going to admit they did it, but they even look for graves and stuff. They have not found any indication, or anything that links them to that colony, any bones or anything. The disappearance of the Roanoke Island colony remains one of America's greatest and most interesting. It's still an unsolved mystery. So, yeah. That's true, but you'd think they would have found necklaces or something that would have indicated they were cannibalistic. But there is no real, they have not found any real evidence of anything. That is a strange thing. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's going to remain a mystery. I mean, yeah, I know. They would have found some indication that they were cannibalistic, though. Something. And as far as I know, they haven't. If you know of anything else that would have led to that, let me know, because I will check it out. Sure, they could have been tossed and everything. So, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah, they could have been tossed into the sea or something. But they would have found necklaces or something, or some kind of adornment, but I don't know. It's a bizarre, it's really interesting. Yeah, John White, he was the governor of the colony. But he got caught up. There was a war over in England, and he couldn't get back for 3 years. So, as I understand it, that their homes, what they lived in, their cabins, I suppose you could call them, that dinner was still on the table, basically. And everything was just left. Nothing was, there wasn't signs of a struggle. Yeah, as far as I know, they did investigate the Croatoan tribe area. Nothing's come up, so I don't know. Yeah, it's possible, Michelle. Anything's possible. But as I understand it, everything was left. There was no signs of a struggle. Nothing was overturned or... Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's going to remain a mystery for a long time, apparently, because nobody has come up with anything about this. There's theories, of course, but nothing concrete. So, I don't know. I don't know. They haven't found anything, so to me that makes sense, but I honestly don't know. Apparently it's going to remain a mystery. But moving on, the 5 spookiest disappearances of all time. Okay, people go missing all the time. Sometimes they want to disappear. Sometimes it may be someone else wants them to vanish. Then there are the cases where you can never really be sure what happened, though you can be sure something strange is going on. And here are 5 cases of disappearances in the most mysterious of circumstances. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, we don't know. It's possible. That's possible too, Michelle. For all we know, yeah, exactly. We could come up with dozen scenarios. It's really, I just don't know. I haven't seen enough evidence of anything. Again, that indication of what happened, nothing. So that's possible too. We don't know. We don't know. So very true, Michelle. Very true. Benjamin Bathurst. Benjamin Bathurst was a British diplomat. He disappeared without a trace in 1809. Now, this might not sound too mysterious, because considering how common murders, robberies, and bandits were during the Napoleonic Wars, in a day and age when, of course, forensics didn't even exist, this was so notably sudden, it may have been attributed to a supernatural case, even suggesting he hopped between dimensions. Interesting. Excuse me. Bathurst was traveling through Prussia at the time under the alias of Baron de Kock. He and his German courier stopped at the town of Perleberg at an inn called the White Swan while they waited for fresh horses to be harnessed. After staying a few hours, they were notified their carriage was ready. Bathurst left the room immediately and his companion followed shortly after, only to find that Bathurst had completely disappeared in between the distance between the inn and the carriage. No sign of the diplomat could be found. At first, a search was not mobilized. Bathurst was traveling under an alias, and his disappearance was not noted until his companion managed to travel back to England with the news. Bathurst's wife immediately left for Germany, where a captain had already mobilized his troops for a fruitless search. The first sign found of the man was an expensive fur coat, turned up in the outhouse of a family that worked at the White Swan. Later, his pantaloons were found in the forest north of Perleberg, but no other trace of the man was ever found. Contemporary reports argued whether Bathurst was in his right mind, with many investigators working under the impression he had chosen to disappear. But the most thorough account of his disappearance comes from Baring Gould's Historic Oddities and Strange Events. It's creepy. Mr. Bathurst returned to the inn. He countermanded the horses. He said he would not start till night. He considered it would be safer for him to spin along the dangerous portion of the route by night when Napoleon's spies would be less likely on the alert. He remained in the inn writing and burning papers. At 7 o'clock, he dismissed the soldiers and ordered the horses to be ready by 9. He stood outside the inn watching his portmanteau, which had been taken within, being replaced on the carriage. He stepped around to the heads of the horses and was never seen again. Baring Gould goes on to say that it was quite dark, and though there were witnesses in the courtyard, and, not many were paying attention. The man seemed agitated in the hours before, as though he knew he was in danger. For a strange reason, no one knows for sure. The suddenness and completeness of his disappearance has always been a point of interest, and it inspired a number of science fiction stories and novels. The most notable of these is He Walked Around the Horses, a sci-fi novel in which Bathurst slips into an alternate universe from the courtyard of the White Swan. There was never, of course, again, any conclusive evidence what happened to him, in 1852. Was he a victim of murder, a kidnapping, or simply step out of this world and into another? We may never know. Of course, we just talked about Roanoke. That was one of the creepiest ones. Let's see. Boo, 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 boo. Okay, here's a little more on the Roanoke disappearance, though. With problem rising back home in England, White was unable to return to Roanoke for almost 3 years. The settlement was deserted in 1590. Of a colony that had been left with 90 men, 17 women, and 11 children, not a single one could be found alive or dead. It's clear that many of the local natives harbored ill will towards them. There was no sign of a struggle or battle at the site of the colony. The colony showed signs of a very unhurried departure. The only answer White could imagine was that the colony had moved. 12 years passed before Raleigh even launched an investigation. Other accounts suggest that the Roanoke colonists moved elsewhere and integrated with the natives. Archaeological expeditions are still seeking to solve this mystery to this day, but no solid evidence of their fate has yet been found. Okay, Leah Roberts. In March 2000, 23-year-old Leah Roberts disappeared from her home after a tumultuous couple of years in which she had lost both her parents and dropped out of college. 9 days after she first went missing, the wreck of her Jeep was discovered in a remote forest. Several days after this, a man reported a sighting of a young woman wandering disoriented and confused around a gas station some distance away. After this, no trace of Leah was ever found. Before Leah's disappearance, she seemed to be going through the same kind of soul-searching that would be familiar to many who've gone through particularly rough periods in their lives. After dropping out of college, she took up new pursuits, photography, poetry, guitar, and maybe going on a road trip west. None of her friends expected her to leave when she did, however. It was March 9th, 2000, and Leah was making plans with friends, including agreeing to do some babysitting the next day. Later in the day, her roommate noticed Leah had not returned home. She didn't turn up to babysit the next day and was not home by that evening. She was reported missing on March 13th. Everything that remained in Leah's room suggested the woman had been planning on leaving on an extended trip, but with the intention to return. Much of her clothing was missing. She seemed to have taken her cat, but she had left a note bundled with enough money to cover around a month's worth of rent and expenses. This indicates she intended to return. The note assured her friends she wasn't suicidal. In fact, she was just the opposite. Leah's sister Kara had access to her accounts at that time and was able to look into her records. Some purchases included gas or food in a motel paid for on a debit card near Memphis, Tennessee. Kara concluded Leah was heading to the Cascade Mountains of Washington, to a place of much beauty. At this point, Kara seemed assured she knew where her sister was and what she was doing. She gave up her investigation, simply waiting. The last activity on Leah's accounts occurred on the morning of March 13th. After a few days of silence, her car was found in Bellingham, Washington, without Leah inside or around it. A jogger had come across the site where articles of clothing had been strewn by the roadside, with some even tied to trees and branches. At the bottom of a steep embankment off the side of this road was Leah's smashed up Jeep. The crash site suggested the Jeep had been traveling fast when it left the road. Inside the vehicle, police found pillows and blankets hung inside the windows, suggesting someone had been living inside, at least temporarily. Leah's passport, checkbook, license, and many of her belongings were found scattered in the surrounding area, including cat food and a cat carrier. Valuables and an amount of cash were also located at the crash scene, meaning robbery hadn't been the cause. Um, Searching through her belongings, they found a ticket stub from a theater that suggested she had stopped in Bellingham. The line of investigation led them to two men who had dined and conversed with her on March 13th. These men claimed that Leah had left the restaurant with a third man, who she called Barry. They spent 2 weeks searching for Leah in the area, under the assumption she had been injured and left the car behind, but no trace of her was found. The next development came when a man claimed to have seen her disoriented and confused in a gas station close to Seattle. The only other evidence that was found came years later in 2006 when the crashed Jeep was gone over again. Detectives found that a wire had been cut that would allow the car to accelerate without someone in it pushing the pedal. The crash could have been staged. Along with this, a fingerprint was found under the hood, along with some male DNA on Leah's clothes. She has never been officially declared deceased, and they keep organized events to keep the missing woman alive. It's possible she disappeared, and no evidence of her has turned up anywhere. Yeah, it's possible he made up that story, Michelle. It's real possible. But we may never know. Okay, another one. Missing 411. Of course, Leah is not the first nor the last person to have disappeared in one of America's wilder forested areas. She is one of many. One of thousands, in fact. One of these is David Paulides, who has compiled a series of books under the name Missing 411, chronicling unsolved disappearances in national parks. They seem to follow a certain pattern. Children are often the ones who disappear, in many cases, when they were walking right by their parents. Those who are found sometimes turn up in places described as inaccessible. Clothing has been found, sometimes neatly folded, and of course, at times, bodies do turn up in places that have already been searched several times, if not hundreds. Okay. Missing people who are found alive often can't describe what happened or where they were. In a lot of cases, especially children, are found, whether dead or alive, further away from the place where they went missing, or how could they have possibly traveled to that place on their own. One of the cases involved an 8-year-old girl named Catherine Van Alst, who got lost in the Ozark Mountains in 1946. She went missing after going for a walk near her camp, getting lost in the thick vegetation. Catherine was found alive after 6 days, unharmed and seemingly unworried by her ordeal. When searchers called her name, she simply stepped out of a cave saying, "Here I am." This girl is 8 years old, mind you. The park she had gotten lost in was called Devil's Den. And those studying have noted that children often seem to get lost in places with similar names. In 1938, a 5-year-old named Alfred went missing in the Rocky Mountain National Park. He had gone with his dad to the river, and there had wanted to go join 2 family friends a little upriver. It was only when the group returned they noticed Alfred was missing. The day after he disappeared, a huge party searched the area. A couple of hikers in a nearby area looked up to see a young boy perched in a place called the Devil's Nest. By the time they realized the boy was missing and notified the searchers, he was already gone. Another child who went missing, 6-year-old Dennis Martin, in a highly publicized case that led to one of the largest national park searches ever. It even got help from the United States Army Special Forces, the Green Berets. Dennis disappeared in the Smoky Mountain National Park. This is a place that's infamous for the number of people who go missing. Martin had been just one participant in a prank whereby he and his brothers would jump out from the bushes and scare the adults. But Dennis never appeared. He was wearing brightly colored clothing that helped his relatives keep track of him until this point. But the young boy had simply disappeared. Later that day, a nearby group heard a sickening scream from the forest, and moments later seeing a rough-looking man running swiftly through the woods. The case was one that engrossed the searchers. Dennis's father spent 2 weeks searching, while a park ranger named Dwight McCarter found himself particularly haunted by the case. For the young boy to disappear so completely didn't make sense. While Paulides is convinced that all these cases, or a large number of them, are related, he is also known for his research into the cryptid Bigfoot. Okay, so that boy was never found. Nothing ever... It's just bizarre. Totally bizarre. The last one is the Sodder family. One common element in cases of missing children is a phenomenon where parents seem unable to accept the apparent deaths of their children, even when presented with strong evidence. Yet, in the case of the Sodder family, the parents' insistence that their children are still alive might just be true. The Sodder family was a large one, with parents George and Jenny and their 10 children. George was actually born in Sardinia, Italy, and he later migrated. On Christmas Eve of 1945, the whole family was together to celebrate. Late in the night, Jenny took a phone call from a female voice she didn't recognize, asking for someone she didn't know. Jenny only noticed the other woman's odd laugh as she hung up. Her eldest child had fallen asleep on the couch, and Jenny assumed the other children had all gone upstairs. Around 1 a.m., she was woken up by the sound of something hitting the roof, and half an hour later woke up to the smell of smoke. George's office was on fire, having seemingly started around the telephone line and fuse box. The parents and 4 children escaped the house, and though they called upstairs for the other 5 children, they didn't hear a response. Trying to rescue the other children was oddly complicated. First, the phone line didn't work, and the eldest Sodder child had to run to a neighbor's to call the fire department. When George went to try and rescue the other children from the attic, the ladder he would have used could not be found. Next, he tried to move his trucks over by the house so he could climb up them into the window, but neither of them would start. Low on manpower and resources, the fire department couldn't respond to the call until the next morning. Excuse me. By that time, the remains of the Sodder family had to watch as the house burned slowly and crumbled in on itself. As the fire department searched the wreckage, however, no trace of the 5 children who had supposedly perished in the fire could be found, not even bones. An inquest held that the cause of the fire had been faulty wiring, though one of the jurors on the panel was a man who had earlier threatened George that his house would be burned and his children taken away for making anti-Mussolini comments. Oh, please. The parents couldn't even bear to attend their supposed children's funerals. The Sodder parents started to question whether their children really died in the fire. Jenny burned small piles of animals to see whether fire could completely destroy even bones. A repairman revealed that the phone line had not been burned through, but had been deliberately cut on the night of the fire. The missing ladder was found at the bottom of an embankment. Sightings of the children started to crop up nearby. A box that supposedly contained the remains of one of the children turned out to contain a beef liver. And the man who had buried it, now get this, admitted he had been asked to lie about its origins. Yeah, right? 10, yeah. The prevailing theory is that the children were abducted by the Sicilian mafia in retaliation for George's criticism of the Italian fascist government. But of course, again, nothing has ever been proven. This is just a theory. It could be likely that the Sodder children are still out there somewhere. The family even received a photo in 1967, supposedly showing one of their now adult children, including a cryptic message on the back that no one ever discovered the meaning of. Yeah, and 5 went missing. Crazy, huh? Yeah, busy, weren't they? So, yeah, that is really bizarre. Nothing has turned up about them. So, what do you think of these odd circumstances and these bizarre, things going on? It's really, really strange. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about Susan Walsh. Yeah, it's really bizarre. She is still considered a missing person, Susan Walsh. She's been missing for 22 years. Well, how long now? 22 years. She was an American writer and freelance journalist who disappeared outside her home in Nutley, New Jersey on July 16th. They don't know. It didn't say what the message. It was some kind of cryptic message. No one's ever solved what the meaning of it was to this day, so I don't know. I will see if they have it somewhere, Michelle. Okay. Walsh's disappearance was widely publicized in the late 90s, especially after several newspapers and media outlets published articles implying her disappearance was potentially linked to the Russian Mafia or New York City's underground vampire community. Both subjects she had investigated while writing for The Village Voice. Walsh's case has been profiled on multiple programs, including Unsolved Mysteries in '97 and Disappeared in 2012. She was also subject of a 1998 book titled Piercing the Darkness, Undercover with Vampires in America Today by Catherine Ramsland. On July 16th, 1996, yeah, I don't know. It said it was just a cryptic message. Nobody could could understand what it was. They never figured it out. It didn't say what it said on the back. It just said a cryptic message that nobody's ever figured out. On July 16th, 1996, Walsh left her apartment complex in Nutley, New Jersey, which she shared with her son. Her estranged husband, Mark, lived below them. Walsh had left to run errands and make a telephone call at a payphone across the street, leaving her son in the care of his father. This was the last time she was seen. At the time of Walsh's disappearance, she was enrolled in a master's program in English at New York University, which she had halfway completed, and was working as a freelance journalist, meanwhile supporting herself and her son by working various jobs as a stripper. At the time of her disappearance, her friends worried she had relapsed into drug problems after maintained 11 years of sobriety. I don't know, 11 years, that's a long time. I can't, that'd be hard to, backslide to. It just said it was a cryptic message on the back of the photo, which nobody has ever deciphered. Yeah, the vampires got her. Could be. Police ruled out Walsh's ex-husband as a suspect, and was later noted that the page for the month of July had been mysteriously torn out of her calendar in her apartment. Though police had few clues to go off, rumors circulated that her disappearance might have been connected to the investigative research she had been doing at the time. She had written an in-depth report on a strip club ring in which members of the Russian Mafia were allegedly forcing young girls into the sex industry, which was published in The Village Voice. Following this article, Walsh also explored an underground vampire community in New York City. But the newspaper did not run the story as they felt her writing on the matter was not objective. Ultimately, police were unable to establish any connections between Walsh's disappearance and her work on either article. She established a friendship with journalist James Ridgway during her time writing with The Voice, and Ridgway referring to her as his most reliable writer. At the time, Walsh had also participated in a documentary produced by her friend Jill Morley titled Stripped, which detailed women working in the sex industry. Walsh was recorded in a group interview for the film on July 14, 2 days before her disappearance, during which she made a reference to having a stalker. She had also hired herself out. Where was I? I hate that. I looked at your thing, the Vampire's Guide. That could possibly be. Let's see. She had also hired herself out to a German documentary crew making a film about Russian immigrants becoming go-go dancers, and was also in the midst of developing a documentary on the subject with the BBC shortly before her disappearance. Walsh's last work was her contributions to the book Red Light, Inside the Sex Industry by Ridgway and Sylvia Platsche. Walsh served as a primary researcher for the book and also contributed photographs and personal writings within a month before her disappearance. In a 2006 article in the New York Post, it was noted Walsh had confided to a former boyfriend that another of her ex-boyfriends had been stalking her. Additionally, the article stated her husband Mark had refused to allow police to perform forensic testing of their home. Interesting. Yeah, it could be them. You know how thorough they can be. It could be, very well could be, made her disappear. I mean, she just went outside her apartment for crying out loud. Nobody saw anything? That's crazy. That is just crazy. Could one news article, could one news article be to blame for her disappearance? We're going to find out. It's possible. You know how hush hush the Russian mafia was. I'm typing, hang on. Yeah. One of them got her. That's for sure. It's got to be either one of the other. Could one news article be to blame for the 36-year-old disappearance? After a freelance journalist goes missing, people question if her articles had something to do with it. Susan Walsh, of course, disappeared outside her New Jersey home on July 16, 1996. She had left her apartment complex, which she shared with her 11-year-old son, to run a few errands and make a phone call across the street. She never returned. And eerily, the month of July was torn from her daily schedule and calendar. Her investigative reporting prompted many to fear that her disappearance might have been linked to the Russian mob. Yeah. Yes, nobody sees anything. Yeah, especially New York City, New Jersey. It's amazing how many people don't see anything. This opened up a threat to her, said her father, Floyd Merchant. He told CNN that Susan told him 2 contracts were issued for her murder after the sex ring story appeared in the Village Voice. Floyd said his daughter feared for her life and took up drinking again. Whether or not that's true, we don't know. According to her father, the last time he saw her, she was worried about someone having her killed, that she was coming apart at the seams. But her friends seemed to think otherwise. Okay. A documentary Susan was in conjured up more potential worries and stripped. Susan said she had a stalker. So, yeah, could have been her ex-boyfriend. The stalker, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know. We don't know much about him, for sure. Um, it's really hard telling. It really is. Excuse me. Let me bring this up. I don't know. I think it could be one or the other. Yes, that's how, yeah, exactly. That's definitely how you stay alive, for sure. Um, New York City vampires and the disappearance of Susan Walsh. This is a possibility. Um, 20 years later, after the disappearance of Susan Walsh, it continues to be one of the most intriguing missing persons cases in New York City. She worked as an exotic dancer since her early 20s and dreaming of becoming a writer for just as long. Walsh had been using her contacts and experience in New York City's seedy underbelly to break into the world of investigative journalism. So do you think the vampires could have something, the underground vampires? Okay. In the weeks prior to her vanishing, she had been working on an article for the Village Voice regarding the growing popularity of Manhattan's underground vampire community. An article ultimately rejected for being too sympathetic of its subject. Around the same time, Walsh told her close friends she feared a stalker, but wouldn't divulge any further information, so she wouldn't endanger them. In the 2 decades since her disappearance, many theories regarding what happened to her continue to churn. But one ranks most disturbing. Did Walsh get too close to a New York City vampire cult and pay with flesh and blood as a consequence? As the usual suspects initially questioned whether Susan Walsh had simply left on her own. If so, there was little for them to do besides attempt to locate her. However, interviews with friends and family quickly put this theory on ice. She was a doting mother to her only son and highly protective of him. Leaving behind the most important person in her life was very uncharacteristic. Next up for detectives, what circumstances may have led to foul play? And naturally, their first focus was on those closest to Walsh. At the time she vanished, she had been living with a male friend of hers, and meanwhile, her ex-husband and father of her son lived beneath her. Both men were eventually cleared of suspicion. Almost immediately, author and clinical vampirism expert Catherine Ramsland decided to dive into New York vampire scene in an attempt to uncover, oh my gosh, what happened to Susan. Her book on the matter, Piercing the Darkness, Undercover with Vampires in America Today, was published in 1998, provides an examination of the vampire underground as a whole, in a sense fulfilling what Walsh set out to do. Even back in the 90s, Ramsland was able to identify the internet as a game-changing resource for subcultures like the vampire community. The Ramsland's ultimate takeaway was that the New York City underground community consisted almost exclusively of benign men and women dwelling in harmless, macabre fantasy. Perhaps they occasionally dabbled in consensual blood sharing, blood consumption, and various fetishes, but nothing more. If Susan Walsh was a victim of an underground vampire conspiracy, then why didn't the perpetrators make an effort to prevent herself from digging far deeper than Walsh ever did? In Ramsland's opinion, it's unlikely a link exists between the New York vampire subculture Walsh was exploring in her disappearance. But Ramsland doesn't ignore the fact that the underground vampire community, as harmless as it may be as a whole, seems to benefit from the public perception of being capable of sinister acts. She highlights several gruesome crimes in recent history by individuals either claiming to be vampires or acting like them. Is it possible Susan Walsh gained the attention of such an individual? Possible. If she's alive, her friends and relatives either don't know it or have no interest in sharing that information. With 2 decades now past, it's increasingly unlikely we will ever find the truth. So, well, the ex-boyfriend was cleared. Men were cleared. The stalker she wouldn't talk about, so it could be that stalker. So, that's a real possibility at this point. She never divulged any information about this stalker, so no one knows anything. And who ripped out her July calendar out of her planner and the calendar? That was a strange, really strange and bizarre thing to do. But her ex-husband and her boyfriend and everybody, they were all cleared. So, I'm headed towards the Russian mob there. You don't go digging into their stuff, and especially the sex industry. Oh my God. That was like putting a big target on yourself. And so that remains a mystery to this day. You think we'll ever find out about any of these mysteries? It's possible. Who knows? It'd be nice to know what happened to some of these people, at least. But we may never know. Look at Roanoke. We may never know the truth about that either. So, that kind of wraps it up for tonight. I hope you found it interesting. It was kind of interesting, to say the least. And the National Forests, are they a paranormal hotbed? I'm thinking with you, Michelle, dimensional, for sure. It's strange because they'll turn up, if they're found, then a lot of them turn up in places that are deemed inaccessible. How'd they even get there? In some places where they searched hundreds of times before and nothing. So, and the park services are very closed mouth about this. They won't say anything because they don't know, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's definitely it. Was her dad right about that? That she had contracts out on her? It's possible. But again, we may never know the truth. Yeah, definitely a hit thing. Okay, wrap it up for tonight. Rundown for the shows. DWD tomorrow night. Decades with Denise. We're going to do kind of top heavy metal albums and songs. So we'll get into that tomorrow night. Interesting, cool stuff. Of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Don't forget tonight, later, Ike Diaz will be on with The Jam, and that's a party all night long with Ike Dog. So stop in and say hey to him later. The top heavy metal bands may be a 2-parter. We'll have to see how far we get tomorrow night. And if it is, a part 2 will be on Tuesday. Wednesday morning, Hump Day Humor with Michelle and myself. So get this day started right. And join us in the morning. This week, I think I'm going to do a little on Shark Week, Thursday. We're going to do sharks, I think. I wanted to do something this week, but of course, not enough hours in the day, I swear. So maybe a shark thing on Thursday. And soon, we're going to be doing reincarnation. So that's going to be pretty cool. Thursday night, join Lolita's Jam. She does hip-hop, some underground music, and new artists. So please stop by and say hi to her and join in. And Friday, we're back with Hollywood Review with myself. And after that, join Chris Stevens, our big freak, with Freaks in the Basement. Best show ever, honestly. So stop on in for that. Yeah, the Underground Vampires would be a cool thing to look into, to see what the deal is. Of course, you always get a rogue one, though. You know, it seems like there's a rogue or two that has to go that extra. So, you know, we may look into that a little later, a little investigative stuff. So, that's the shows for the week. A couple of weeks, yeah, Planet B.O.B. in 8 days, the big one. Boom. Yeah. So, a week from Monday, join us for that, Michelle and myself. Planet B.O.B. Shout out to Planet B.O.B. Also, the group on Facebook, Survival Prepping, questions asked and answered. It is really a great group, so check it out. Shout out to Conflicted scenarios of what would you do with Julie Kinney. She's been a guest twice. She is totally awesome. Please check it out. Also, Survival Wolves. Oh, Earth Busting Disaster. Ooh. That's going to be so much fun, Michelle. Looking forward to that one. So, Survival Wolves, Mike Ronan. Check that out. True Horror Junkies, Planet B, period, O, period, B, period, of course. Again, can't say enough about them. True Horror Junkies, Horror Three Ring Circus, Art of Darkness, Walking Dead Freak Show. So, in a couple of weeks, we will be back on Wednesdays with Fear the Walking Dead and then The Walking Dead. Michelle will be a co-host every other Wednesday. So, looking forward to that. It's going to be exciting. And I like what Lauren Cohen said about Maggie's role. Very open-ended. So she's not totally gone. So that's going to be interesting. Let's see, what else is going on? Oh, my goodness. Bedtime, it seems like what's going on. Don't forget, tonight after me, after a little while, Ike Dog will be on with the jam. Party all night long, guys. Music from A to Z. If you want it, he's got it. So there you go. So that kind of wraps it up for tonight. Hope you had an interesting evening. And of course, it's Halloween week, so that's why we did Strange Disappearances. So I think that'll do it. Did I miss anything, Michelle? I don't think so. Excuse me. So, yeah, join us for these upcoming shows. You'll have a great time. And mine is brought to you by KBLP. So, any comments you want to make about tonight's show, please let me know. And shout out to KBLP LLC. We post all the shows there. You can download, check out any of the shows you like. So, yeah, is that it? So much fun. Yes, that's going to be fun. I can't wait. I love Planet B.O.B. On Monday, every other Monday. We have such a good time. And tune in to find out how I die. It's different every week. So, and I don't find out right away. I find out right before the show starts. So it's kind of crazy. And kudos to Michelle for doing those skits. She rocks. She's so awesome. Thank God I have her because she really helped me with some tech stuff. So thank you, Michelle, for everything. So that'll wrap it up. I'm going to say goodnight. Peace out, y'all.
KBLP LLC. Check us out on iHeart, Speaker, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, with the best podcasters in the business. Denise Harris, Chris Stevens, Michelle Auger, Ike Diaz, Desiree Pickett, Anissa Nicole, Cecilia Flores, Lolita Diaz. Sponsored by TBs303.com. We are also looking for new podcasters. Inbox any of our podcasters or me, Ike Diaz, directly on Facebook, and someone will get back with you ASAP.
Thank you so much for listening to Replays on KBLP LLC. Look out for more replays in the future of all your favorite shows. So check them out, and it's a good way to check out shows at new times. So thank you very much.